Lee Hendricks here from Proactive Healthstyle. And tonight I get to talk to you about a really special essential oil from doTERRA. It's one of their new releases in September 2017, and it's Copaiba, C-O-P-A-I-B-A. Copaiba comes from a tree in South America, and it's actually taken steam distilled from the resin from this tree. And this is an incredible, incredible oil. You'll find it all throughout South America because they actually know what it's good for. And before we get into what we've used Copaiba for, I want to talk about a special system in the body first, and it's called the endocannaboid system. Now, this system is active from pre-birth to death. It's an incredible system within the body, and it's responsible for our ability to balance. So health and balance, let's just call it health and balance. It was discovered back in the 1990s when we were doing a lot of investigation into what happens with cannabis and THC, which is where it gets its name from. Because, of course, the cannaboids and THC affect these endocannabinoid receptor sites. So namely, there's two different sites in the body. There's something called the CB1 site. Now these CB1, and there's a CB2, CB1, kind of easy there. But all of these sites, the CB1s, the CB2s, you're going to find on every tissue in the body. This is incredible, right? Bone tissue, nerve tissue, our immune function, it's everywhere, which is why this endocannabinoid system is so important in the body for regulation. It's because it's everywhere. Now, typically the CB1 receptor sites, you're going to find those more in the brain and the CNS, the central nervous system, brain, spinal cord. And you're going to see things like thermal regulation there, great ocular health, appetite, amongst other things, and neuroprotectiveness, looking at brain function. Now, typically the cannabinoid that we know hits this site is THC, which of course is a psychoactive drug, and we don't necessarily want the effects of that. So just keep that in mind as we move on. CB2s are the other receptor site that we're going to see within the endocannabinoid system, and we're going to see that affecting the endocrine system and the immune system as well. So this is really exciting to me because we have this immune regulation, the CB2, and the neuroprotective aspects on the CB1. It's like, really, this is really cool stuff, right? So when I talk about that and these key immunosuppressive results with it too, the Copaiba is a key anti-inflammatory. Now, when we talk about inflammation in the body, of course, especially as we're aging, we have far more inflammation going on. And we know that inflammation is a key problem in things such as heart disease, arthritis, a lot of different autoimmune diseases as well. So when we're using the Copaiba oil for that, it's going to help decrease inflammation in the body, help the body self-regulate. Now these things that hit the cannabinoid receptor sites, we find those in our essential fatty acids, especially the omega-3s. They're going to produce those results, which is why our omega-3s are so good for us, because of the regulatory function they have in the system. And Copaiba is going to have the same kinds of effects. So whenever we think about all of the different effects we're seeing with different cannabinoids, because we're seeing pot shops pop up all over the place in Canada right now, and some of the effects we might not want, but the Copaiba oil is going to have that. And just as a point of interest, when we talk about Copaiba oil, the thing that's hitting the receptor sites in this is a wonderful substance called beta-carotenoline. The wonderful thing about this is you can ingest it. So they do say be sparing with this stuff. So we only want to have 1 to 2 drops a day internally. Otherwise, it can produce symptoms very similar to food poisoning. But you can do it like this. And it does not taste terrific. It's not really, really horrid, but it kind of gives you a feeling like a numb cotton mouth. which I find really interesting, that numb cotton mouth, because one of the things this does is it's a great pain reliever, and it disrupts the nociceptive sites, or those sites that detect pain. So it's doing a lot of things that acetaminophen and Tylenol and things like that would do to stop our perception of pain. So this is great for pain. The other thing that's really good for when we talk about pain is when you're using a lot of the different drugs on the market, like Tylenol, acetaminophen, et cetera, they have an incredibly bad side effects on the liver. But our Copaiba oil actually supports liver function. So we've got three functions right there: a huge anti-inflammatory, great for pain management, and it's liver protective. So, and the other thing it is as I was saying earlier, it's also neuroprotective, and it's a modulator of the immune system. So for somebody like me that has multiple sclerosis, this really excites me, because multiple sclerosis is a disease. It's an autoimmune disease, but it's an autoimmune disease that's affecting my nervous system. So combine something that's supporting the immune system and modulating it, and something that's neuroprotective as well. This is like picture perfect for anybody that's worried about nerve function. Other things that's been really, really good for is brain function. So this is an oil that I'm going to use whenever I'm worried about what's going on in the brain, what kind of brain function. It's been used in Brazilian folk medicine for years as a traditional healing. I'm just going to read something to you. A research study published in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine looked at how Copaiba oil resin could possibly be used as an anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective after neural disorders. The study used adult rats to investigate the anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects of COR after acute damage to the motor cortex. The results of the study suggested that COR treatment induces neuroprotection by modulating inflammatory response following an acute damage to the central nervous system. So let me just translate that for you. It sounds like this is going to be really good for head injuries, brain injuries. That's incredible. Just think of your friends that have kind of a bang on their noggin. This is something that you want to use. One of its other traditional uses is for skin. It has a lot of antibacterial, antiseptic properties. So it's really good for acne and other stuff that might be going on in the skin. And in fact, it's one of its more profound effects is it's incredible for those that may be suffering when the intestine might have a bit of a leakage, and you have fecal contamination within the peritoneum, which can cause sepsis. They found that, again, this was another rat study, it was poor rats, but they found that when you ingested the Copaiba oil in very small, minute doses, 1 to 2 drops a day, it actually was protective and would decrease the morbidity in rats that were treated beforehand. So it could prevent death for them. So some have suggested that this might be a really, really good compound to use if you're undergoing something like chemotherapy or radiation on the gut, because that's going to thin out the membranes on the bowel, which could cause some leakage. So just something to think about there. It's like all these things that we read or think about or hear, it's to apply it with some critical awareness. And how can that work? How would it be beneficial for me? Other thing that Copaiba does is it's really moistening to the skin as well. So that's kind of nice. We already said it's an immune regulator. The other thing it does, it's been shown to help be a great sealant for root canals. So there's some very specific bacteria that root canals can harbor that don't need oxygen to survive, and they can have catastrophic effects in the body. And what they're showing is that Copaiba oil in contact with that will destroy those particular organisms. It's cytotoxic to them, which is really, really cool, but it's safe for the rest of our cells. Its use in infections has been quite extensive, including things like MRSA, the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, some of the superbugs that we're seeing. So this is an oil that I'm wanting to use if I have somebody that would be going into a hospital setting, undergoing surgery or something along those lines. It might be a really good one to both prevent infection, to help with healing, and it's also going to help with scars. It's going to help, it increases the rapidity of healing by increasing the rate at which scabs are formed. So you're going to have more rapid healing of things as well. So this little baby, the Copaiba, you want to get it ordered, and you want to have a few bottles around. This is something that I'm going to throw in my grab-and-go bag. I always want to have an extra bottle on hand just in case something should happen. And it's going to be one of my desert island oils. So thanks so much for listening, and I hope you got something on this for what you can do with this incredible oil. And of course, I'm always using the doTERRA ones because understanding the components within this oil is also really important. And science has shown us that even from tree to tree, you're going to have different levels of the different terpenes, which are some of the active components that we're looking at within the Copaiba oil. So within doTERRA, we use 4 different species of trees to get our Copaiba oil. It comes from the Copaifera tree. So we used 4 different species of the Copaifera tree to produce our oil. But what that's doing is giving us a balance out, so we're sure we're getting a proper, or the balance that we want to have between all the individual components, all the individual chemical components within the Copaiba oil. And one of the things that we do know is when we have that mixture of all these incredible chemical components within oil, it has a synergistic effect. It's far more effective than any isolated compound out of the oil. They just work that way. So we always want to use that whole, that whole oil rather than an isolated component. And of course, with doTERRA, you've got a lot of sustainability in there. We're looking at how we're going to keep this oil available to us for decades to come, and how we help the people that harvest this resin for us as well. So please go and get your Copaiba oil. It is one that you are going to love. Thanks so much for listening. Bye now.